Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, if this debate were to happen in like a vacuum, then of course, in all instances, we have to kick in the triage and be able to help those who are like wrecked or help those who are already at a point in which they're gonna die or the fatality is at its highest. But debate in which it operates, especially among the urban poor communities who go to these public healthcare centers, like what my first speaker had characterized, they don't know any better. Meaning, they leave it up to the worst case or the point in which they feel symptoms and end up going there and trying to be able to figure it out. But I get it, right? Marvy and team and Carlos, they're all gonna say like, yeah, Joseph, fuck you, but they're gonna literally die on your side at the point in which you don't treat them. I think that these people on both sides are cooked, and the marginal upside that you get, even if you save them, as what my dep said, doesn't undo the damage of neglect or ignorance that had already happened. Meaning, okay, your quintuple bypass surgery from costing $500,000 is now, I'll be charitable, 50% off, so you only pay $250. That's still a really huge thing for the state to be able to pay for, as opposed to the counterfactual that my dep talked about, which is the Holter exam, the angiogram, and even generic blood pressure medicines called beta blockers. It costs like 30 pesos a tablet. So on both sides, if you're able to drive down the cost by 50%, do I really want to be in a position where, okay, it's accessible and I can get that surgery, but it's just disproportionately more expensive? I'm not being uncharitable. I'm just saying that for real, when you're able to diagnose or prevent something which we characterize to be hard to be able to detect, is exactly the point in which we need to put more effort to allow people to be cognizant to that reality. Because, and I'll be charitable, the case of side opposition, sure, it works in the very late stage part of it, wherein you're already terminal. And then maybe they're able to reduce the cost of that quintuple bypass by 50%. Or sige, they're able to unclog all of that and then you're able to live 1 or 2 years more. The marginal benefit as opposed to being able to diagnose that at an early stage is exactly the point in which it unlocks. There are 3 questions I'm going to answer to this speech, which are also in line with the questions that Carlos pushed for us to be able to answer. Number 1, what should public healthcare systems do? Number 2, where is the average person better off? And number 3, how can we shift the curve in a way that lowers mortality and fatality rates? Because on Gov, we want to shift that to the middle and to the left. And on opposition, they want to double down and keep it skewed to the right and somehow make it more accessible. The first thing that they tell us is the system can't be able to help you at the point in which there's no treatment. But as what my first speaker said, this debate is about the consequence of priority. Meaning on both sides, on Gov, we still have treatment, and on Op, they still have diagnostics. But this uniquely is about where are we gonna dedicate more resources and capacity? And the answer is simple. It's gonna be in the preventive side because these things are already cheap. But like I said, 50 pesos for a medicine is like what? 10% of the wage of someone on a day-to-day basis. So if we're able to drive that cost lower and maybe even reach a point where they can do lifestyle changes and not have to take medication in the same way that when I'm 20, 30 years down the line, I don't have to go into their side wherein sure, it's more accessible and I can get chemotherapy and radiation. But if these things at a young age were accessible to me, I literally wouldn't have to get there in the process. Meaning, the upside of their case unlocks in the very desperate situation, but on average, where more people are predisposed to be able to be saved, you unlock the benefits of our side when people become more cognizant and are aware. They can take beta blockers to be able to reduce your blood pressure. If it's a bit more severe, then they can take that Holter exam and angio exam, of which the urban poor in status quo are just blind to that reality. On their side, you continue to be ignorant and then you hope and pray that they'll be able to give you treatment. Again, even if that all of the people they diagnose in these public healthcare facilities at the point in which they need that surgery or they need that late stage treatment, it's exactly where you don't get any change and you only buy them an illusion of time. Because if you're not able to educate or indoctrinate those who are going to be younger, then it just becomes an eventuality wherein the mortality and fatality rate of that side of the curve remains the same at the point in which you aren't able to drag it back to the left side to prevent it. The second thing is on the capacity and power of the state, the heart of the extension, right? It's hinged on a presupposition that you don't have access to both. And again, I'll bite the bullet for our side. On our side, people on the far end of the right spectrum are probably gonna die, and that's bad. I'm not here to romanticize that. But the middle part of the spectrum and those who are left on the left side, those who have the capacity to be able to be diagnosed and be prevented earlier, is where the delta happens on side gov. Because from a simple mathematic perspective, more people are going to be saved on our side. We're not saying people won't die, but we're saying that at the point in which the urban poor know the difference between BP and BPM, the point in which they know that blood pressure is not just a matter of you eating sisig, and the point in which you are diagnosed with it, you have that for life, and that makes you predisposed to things like stroke, certain forms of cancer, and coronary heart disease, start making you cognizant to that reality. Of course, on both sides, people might be pasaway, people might only take this more seriously at a later point in time, but we think at least being able to be aware of it allows you to be able to make a more informed decision, as opposed to on their side, okay, at best you're able to be saved, at best you're able to have that quintuple bypass surgery, but in terms of the quality of life, we're able to actually give people a chance to be able to do something about it, bolstering their agency and bolstering the capacity of these public healthcare centers, of which are proximate to the urban poor. We are very proud to stand on side proposition.